Hello everybody and welcome back to Study is Key. That is, welcome back if you've been here before. If you've not been here before, welcome to the channel. Hopefully you'll stick around to the end of the video and then subscribe to the channel so you can stick around for future videos as well. And by the way, just want to say welcome to the, 77 new subscribers that I gained with the last video I put out. All of you are undoubtedly fans of A Messenger of Truth. I just want to say hello, welcome. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content that I put out on this channel. Now, I don't want to extend this intro too long. I've already received a comment that my intros go long, so let's just get straight into the material. And by the way, I agree with that comment. So today we're going to deal with Matthew 25:46. And Matthew 25:46 says, "And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life." Matthew 25:46 is a passage that traditionalists, that is, people who hold to the traditional view of hell, namely that hell is a place wherein the wicked will receive the punishment of everlasting conscious torment. And yeah, Matthew 25:46 is often leveraged as support for that view. Now, I, as an annihilationist, don't agree with that, and I think with good reason. For one, notice the contrast here in Matthew 25:46. It says, "And these will go away into eternal punishment," talking about the goats, right? The unbelievers. "These will go away into eternal punishment, but," that's a contrast, "the righteous into eternal life." So by the very nature of the contrast that we have here, you can say that the goats will not receive what the sheep will receive, and the sheep will not receive what the goats receive. These are mutually exclusive fates. Okay, nobody will receive the punishment and the gift. Both the sheep and the goats will receive one of the two. Now, that being the case, since those who will receive eternal punishment will not also receive eternal life, then what is the only possible punishment here that fits the bill? What is the only punishment that comports with not receiving eternal life? It's death, right? If you don't live forever, which is a necessary condition, it's a prerequisite for being tormented forever, is being immortal, living forever, to be able to endure that torment, then obviously the punishment cannot be eternal conscious torment, because otherwise it would mean that they receive, in fact, eternal life. But since they don't, the only punishment that fits the bill is death. And in fact, Paul in Romans 6:23 explicitly contrasts eternal life with death. And likewise, the evangelist John in John 3:16 contrasts everlasting life with perishing. And so not only does the logic of Matthew 25:46 suggest that the eternal punishment is death, but we also have confirmation in Romans 6:23 and in John 3:16 that the punishment is in fact death. In fact, even Augustine, in his work City of God, in Book 21, Chapter 11, Section 1, admits, and he's no friend of conditional immortality, but he admits that the punishment of death does not consist in how long it takes to kill the offender, but that the punishment of death consists in how long the offender is banished from the society of the living. Namely, he says that death consists in the fact that the offender is eternally banished from the society of the living. Now, some think that everlasting punishment refers to or implies eternal punishing. And what I mean by that is some think that eternal punishment refers to an eternal punishing process, right? The process of meting out the punishment, the process of inflicting it. But that doesn't actually fit the bill here for the reason that I just mentioned, namely that eternal life and eternal punishment are contrasted. Nobody receives both. If you do not live forever, then you cannot be consciously tormented forever. Ergo, the punishment is not everlasting conscious torment. And while it is true that in a vacuum, the phrase eternal punishment can refer to an everlasting punishing process, the process of meting out the punishment or inflicting it, grammatically, there is no reason to favor that over my reading. You see, punishment here is what we call a deverbal noun. Now, let me give you an example. Translation is a deverbal noun, and you could use translation in a couple of different ways. For example, you could say, this is a very precise translation, referring to, for example, I don't know, the ESV, or pick whatever translation you think is very accurate. You could say this is a very precise translation. And when you use translation there, you're referring to the result of the translating process, right? You have this translation. It's the result of that work. And you could also use the word translation to refer to the verb, the act of translating. You could say translation is tedious work, in which case you're referring to translating, not to a finished product. Now, punishment here, I contend, contextually, is better understood as the result of the verb, the result of punishing. And I could show you an example in 2 Maccabees, chapter 7, verse 9, of exactly this kind of thing. It says, "The king of the world will raise us because we die on account of his laws, to an eternal resurrection of life." Now, the word resurrection here in Greek is anabiosis, the prefix ana meaning again, and biosis meaning life. So you could tell why it's translated resurrection. You could even translate it revivification. So the king of the world will raise us because we die on account of his laws to an eternal revivification of life. And by the way, the expression is similar to the one that Jesus uses in John 5:28 through 29, where he speaks of a resurrection of life and a resurrection of judgment. So you have one resurrection that is characterized by life and another resurrection that is characterized by judgment, right? The one group will rise to life, the other will rise to judgment. Now, by the way, by nature of the contrast, if you have one group rising to life and the other not rising to life, obviously, that means that their resurrection is going to be temporary. Yes, obviously the fact of being resurrected means that you're brought back to life, but it is not a resurrection of life. It's not characterized by life, because though they are raised back to life, they will be judged, they will be slain, and go back to their graves. Now, revivification here, or translated resurrection here, can refer to, again, because this is a deverbal noun, it could refer to the verb, the action, or the result of the action. Now, the reason why here it must be the case that it refers to the result of the verb is because if you take it to be a reference to the action, to the verb, then it becomes incoherent. It doesn't make any sense to speak of an eternal revivifying. Because if you are forever being revivified, that means you never actually come back to life, right? Because the moment you come back to life, the revivifying is over, right? You have been revivified. So once you come back to life, you are not being revivified any longer. You have been revivified. So eternal revivification here obviously refers to the result of the revivifying process. And so likewise, that's what I contend is the case here in Matthew 25:46. Eternal punishment refers to the result of punishing. Because again, eternal punishment and eternal life are contrasted. Nobody receives both fates. If you receive eternal punishment, you therefore do not receive eternal life, and therefore cannot be tormented forever, because to be tormented forever would require that you live forever, that you be immortal to be able to endure that punishment. So, grammatically, we have justification for taking punishment, not to refer to a punishing process, but to the outcome of the punishing process. And we have a logical reason, by virtue of the contrast, to reject the notion that eternal punishment refers to eternal conscious torment. And we can even look to Romans 6:23 and John 3:16 for confirmation that, yes, our reasoning here is sound, right? We are reasoning from the text here that the punishment must be death, or at least culminate in death. And in fact, in Romans 6:23, you have the contrast between eternal life and death, and in John 3:16 between life, or eternal life, and perishing. Now, some of you might be wondering, how do we fit Matthew 25:41 into this interpretation? Matthew 25:41 says, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" And now, while I could very easily answer this today, I'm going to leave you guys on a little cliffhanger, and I'm going to address this in another video. And we're going to get into the phrase eternal fire, what it means, and why it is in fact the case that this phrase better supports the annihilationist position over the traditional position. And by the way, I use traditional very loosely because it only became traditional later in history. The earliest church affirmed annihilationism, and I'm very confident in this claim. I will defend this claim. In a video of mine, I look at Irenaeus of Lyon and argue that he was an annihilationist in the early church, and not only so, but he, in his work against heresies, has a rule of faith. That is, he lists out tenets of the faith against which we should measure our doctrine to see whether we are in alignment with what ought to be believed. And one of the things that he includes in his rule of faith is a statement on hell, and his articulation of it is a conditionalist articulation. Well, I'm not going to get into details. I would just encourage you to go watch that video, and I'll, in fact, link it in the description if you guys are interested. For those of you who are interested, this is a cheat sheet that I have written. It is on the rethinkinghell.com website. If you guys want to go check it out, I have a link to it in the description of the video. These are one-page cheat sheets that I call them. They are very brief articulations or defenses of our reading of certain texts as annihilationists. This one is on Matthew 25:46, and there's a link on every single one of these to a Google Doc, and you'll see that all of them fit in one page. And so if you want to print out a one-page defense of a particular verse relating to hell, you could just go to Rethinking Hell, type in cheat sheet with a certain passage, and if a cheat sheet has been written on that passage, you can click on that. You can click the link. That'll lead you to a Google Doc with that cheat sheet that you see here, and it fits within one page, and you can print that out and bring that with you to talk to anybody you want to talk to about this issue. It can help you defend the position if you're not yet super familiar with it and can't really articulate a defense yourself. It's a very good tool, not only to get you familiar with the arguments, but also to help you articulate them on the fly. If you just need a reminder, you can have that at your disposal. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, remember that study is key. Oh, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It is very helpful and very appreciated when you do that. Helps the channel grow, and therefore it helps these videos reach a wider audience, which is obviously the goal. When you put these videos out, you want to be able to share the information with as many people as possible. It's certainly an encouragement when I see that number grow, because it lets me know, hey, I'm not doing this in vain. This is actually reaching people, and you love to see it. So again, see you guys in the next video, and remember that study is key.